Welcome to episode 99 of this tutorial series. Last time we were building out the menu for our missions, so we're going to continue on with that. Let's go and get a spacer, or copy this spacer while we're here. Copy that over, and let's paste that onto the vertical box just underneath the background blur, and paste one more time on that vertical box. And then I'm going to move one of those spaces up between title and this horizontal box, and the other one with the back button, just so there's a little bit of space there. And we can change title to, well, missions, because this is our mission system. Now that we've done that, a little bit of formatting, let's come over to our graph. The last time we came to this graph, we set our primary, secondary, optional, and completed mission grid slots as variables, so we can edit them in here. And this is where we are going to do that. So drag in primary, secondary, holding control so we get the getters, optional, and we'll leave completed because we're going to need to do a new script for that. And with those three, let's right click and type in select. So this selection here, whether it's primary, secondary, or optional, is going to come from this break S missions. So if we select type here and plug type into the index of the select, then we can plug primary missions into primary, secondary missions into secondary, and optional missions into optional, like so. So depending on the type of mission that's set in our data, we will select the right grid slot for that. So what we're going to do inside these grid slots is add our mission widgets, being this utility mission slot that we've created. So to add that, we drag out of return value and type in add child, like so. And the child, or the content that we're going to add, is going to be from this utility mission slot. So these reroutables here. So we can drag out of that, get another reroutable if we want to clean that up a little bit more. So that's going to add to either the primary, secondary, or optional missions, depending on what the type of mission is, meaning it's going to go into the correct column for these three. So let's drag out of the return value and add child and type in cast to uniform grid slot. And then out of that, we can drag out of that and type in set row. So the child's parent is the uniform grid slot. By casting to that slot, we can now tell it which row it needs to be. Similar to what we did in inventory, where we set the rows and columns manually, but this is going to set them automatically. So to set them, we're going to drag out of return value, type in children, and we're going to select get all children. Then out of that array, we're going to get length. So this is going to figure out how long the array is. And then that length is going to be in this row. Next up, drag out of the uniform grid slot caster, and let's type set horizontal alignment, and drag out again, set vertical alignment. And they both need to be set to fill. And then finally, we need to bind the button inside of the actual slot. So let's compile and save that and hop over to our utility mission slot. Into the graph, let's create an event dispatcher and call it button was clicked. And then up here where it says inputs, let's add a new parameter. And that parameter is going to be an integer. And we will call this button clicked. Now let's go over to that button inside the variables and click on clicked. Bit of a tongue twister. And when this is clicked, we're going to compile and save and drag in a call to this button here. So when we click this button inside the menu, it's going to call the dispatcher and, most importantly, set the correct mission index, which is what happened in our inventory. So we'll compile and save that. We'll come back to menu missions and come over to this reroutable here for utility mission slot widget. Let's drag out of that and type in bind event to button was clicked, like so. And you're going to need a few more reroutables for this one. And then we'll drag out of that event and type in custom event, creating the event specifically dragging out of that event, because when we do this, the integer is going to be there, and we will rename this event button clicked. So that event is correctly tied to the binding inside the button inside the widget slot. I know it gets a bit confusing, but if you've done the inventory system before, then you've done this before. We'll come back and fill out this event here because what I'd like to get at the end of this episode is at least a view of your missions inside the mission menu. So when we come back to the for each loop, we need to create a script here at the completed, because right now we don't have any way to put those buttons inside of the uniform grid slots into our event tick to have focus on them. So we have to come up with another system to do that. So let's drag in or come over and copy primary, secondary, and optional missions, paste them next to the event construct where there should be some room underneath. Let's also drag in completed missions. What we're going to do is create a script for all of these, which basically adds them to another array. So we're going to create the script for one and then copy and paste it. Let's drag out of primary missions and get all children. Out of get all children, we want to do two things. Firstly, we want to get length and make sure that we actually have something inside of this grid slot, because we don't need to add anything to it if there's nothing inside it. And then grab a branch to check that. Then we'll grab a for each loop, and the for each loop is going to be the second task outside of our get all children. So get all children into the array input of the for each loop. And then with those children, we're going to create a brand new array. So up to variables, hit the plus sign. This is going to be a widget object reference, and we're going to change it to an array, and we will name this all widget children. We will drag that in there, compile, and drag out of that and type in add. And what we want to add is the array element, like so. So that's going to be an identical script that we're going to do several times over, except that we need to change what's at the end. So I'm going to copy and paste everything except primary missions, and then paste it down again and put secondary missions there. Do the same thing 2 more times. So that's roughly how it should look. Now, as for where the initial executable comes from, it's going to come from our for each loop completed. Out of completed, we're going to go into the first branch, and then that's going to add. But what's really important about this is that we drag out of the false into the next branch, out of the false into the next branch, and out of the false into the next branch, because if we don't have anything here, we don't want to not fire the script at all in case we have secondary missions but no primary. And then as for the next piece, out of completed of each of the for each loops, we want to drag out of that and plug that into the branch as well. So basically, if we have primary missions, we're going to add them to the all children widget array and then move on to check if we have secondary missions. But if we don't, then we come out of false into the next branch. And then if we have secondary missions, we do the same thing. So we're repeating that script 4 times for all 4 of them. But that's only the first part of making sure that the UI works on this. The second part comes up here on the event tick, which we're going to need some more room for. So out of the event tick, we're going to get out all widget children. We're going to drag out of that, type in length. Then out of that length, let's check to make sure that we've got something in it using greater than. And if it is greater than 0, then we'll continue on. So the next section is all widget children into a for each loop, out of true. Drag out and type in mission slot, because we want to cast to our utility mission slots. Now we can get access to the button inside there. So we'll get button, and we know exactly which button it is because we named it. It's button 0. And then now that we have that button, we can come to our has any user focus down here and copy the end of that script and paste that over there. So plug the cast into the branch, plug the button into has any user focus, and plug the reroutable into the button as well. And then once that array is completed, we'll check the back button, which being that there's only one back button, we can get rid of the for each loop and the make array and plug the back button directly into both of these like so, moving our event tick up to plug into the branch. And we're going to need to fire this script here off 2 nodes. So the very first node is going to be out of false from all widget children. So if we don't have any missions to focus on, we just focus on the back button. And if we do have missions, then we come out of completed for our for each loop to focus on the back button. And then one final check. Remember, at the beginning of all of our menus, we set user focus. So we're not going to set the user focus there. Here's how we're going to do the user focus. Event construct is going to come straight into cast into be hero. We'll drag this set user focus down here. And at the very end of completed missions, once we've added all of those to the array, we're going to get all widget children, check for length again. So rather than rewrite that, we can actually come back up to event tick and grab this right here because we've already done it. So all widget children length greater than 0 branch. And then out of that, if we are not greater than 0, we'll set user focus on the back button. But if we are greater than 0, meaning we do have some missions, out of our get widget children, let's get a copy. And out of that, keep it as the first reference. We will cast to utility mission slot like so. We'll convert this into a pure cast, so we don't need an executable. We will get button 0 out of that, and we can set user focus there, copying this node, or we could also do it this way. Let's get rid of the branch, get a select. So if this boolean is false, we'll go into false. And if it's true, we'll go to the first button here like so, and I will just clean this up. You can really see what I mean about how impossible it is to try and keep this all clean, but it's always better to try because you will thank yourself later if you need to troubleshoot anything. So let's plug in the completed out of completed missions into that set user focus. So we're setting the focus as soon as the menu has been created, like so, and don't forget to plug in false out of completed missions because we don't have any completed missions right now. So this script isn't going to fire off until we plug in the false out of this branch into set user focus like so. So we'll compile and save, hit play. We'll talk to this NPC right here and he'll give us a mission. Then we're going to head over to this NPC because this one still has his prerequisites engaged. So we'll hit E, talk to him. He's going to give us a mission. And then if we hit I and go to missions, you can see there that we have story mission 3 and story mission 5. It's hard to see because our turn in check is hovering over, but that's okay. But using arrow keys on your keyboard, you can use a gamepad to select between them. So that is working as intended. And the idea is that when you actually select the button will open up the description of the mission, but we have most definitely run out of time. So we will do that in the next episode, as well as one more thing I want to do to complete these missions. So I will see you guys then.